Hey Dunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and it is time for my review of the debut album from Lil Yachty. This one is called Teenage Emotions. Now, I was originally planning on doing my review of this album much later, so the reason why I decided to record the review of this so early is because this album has been catching a lot of steam and a lot of flack from different critics recently, and I figured it would be a good time to get my thoughts out about this album sooner than some other albums and EPs that I don't think other critics are going to cover. With that, I think I should mention that I absolutely hate it when other critics influence my opinions on things, so I haven't actually watched a full review of this album yet. So anything that you hear come out of my mouth that might even be remotely similar to anything any other critic has said is purely and entirely coincidental. So with all that being said, let's talk about Lil Yachty. My personal journey with the Atlanta Trapper has been a very distinct one, mostly because I was introduced to Lil Yachty in a very unique way. Long story short, I was introduced to Lil Yachty through his song Minnesota by my friend Jeffrey Adamy, who you might recognize from a number of different videos I've done on my channel. And to be quite frank, my first time listening to the song, I thought it was absolutely terrible. And furthermore, with me kind of digging into Lil Yachty's Lil Boat mixtape, I didn't think he was any better. In fact, listening through that the first time, I thought he was absolutely god-awful. But from there, through this really weird and unconventional process, I actually learned to respect Lil Yachty's music quite a bit, and that's through a process that I listened to music, especially in this mumble rap game that's been blowing up a lot in the past couple years. I've been learning to listen through this type of music ironically, and that has made me absolutely fall in love with Lil Yachty. Like, lyrically, almost everything that Lil Yachty has done to date has been very trashy, very immature, a lot of sexual innuendos, all that kind of stuff. But from the get-go, I think generally Lil Yachty and the majority of his fan base knows that. No one's mistaking Lil Yachty to be any kind of Biggie Smalls or Tupac or Kendrick Lamar. That being said, Lil Yachty's music has had a very distinct flavor to it in the past, with Yachty kind of juxtaposing these really ghetto trap beats and lyrics, generally with his vocals, which have been really positive, bright kind of sounding. And strangely enough, that can be best displayed on the song Minnesota, where he's talking about being in the streets and all that stuff while simultaneously singing "Cold Like Minnesota." So no, it's plain and simple. I do not listen to Lil Yachty the same way that I listen to other rappers. In fact, even calling him really a hip-hop artist is kind of insulting to the rap game, just because he's so far out in some other direction than everyone else is. So what did I think about Teenage Emotions? In general, I'd have to say that I had very mixed feelings about this album. If someone made me summarize my thoughts about this album into like one sentence, I'd probably say that this album feels like, in a way, a bit of a sequel to the Lil Boat mixtape, except a lot less condensed and therefore a lot less hard-hitting. This album comes out to a full 21 tracks long, and not many of those are really super short or anything, so this ends up being a fairly long project. The album even starts out very similarly to how his debut mixtape started out, with his uncle Darnell Boat talking about his nephews Lil Yachty and Lil Boat and kind of comparing and contrasting them, and then having Yachty start out on this, and then Lil Boat go from there into the second track, DN Freestyle. And I mean, in general, I'd say that you could draw a number of parallels between this album and the Lil Boat mixtape. For example, the song Peekaboo featuring Migos, Quavo's appearance on that track, in my opinion, mirrors heavily his feature on Minnesota, as well as the song Harley sounds, in terms of its overall sound, a lot like Minnesota itself, with its really heavy distorted bass line, its trap beats kind of going throughout it, its pretty little happy melody kind of floating throughout the track, which complements, in my opinion, Yachty's vocals very nicely on tracks like this. And even though there are these small little audible references to the Lil Boat mixtape on this album, I think some of the strongest moments on this album come where Yachty, in my opinion, is trying to go for kind of a different concept. In my opinion, the concept he was going for with the Teenage Emotions album is kind of trying to be able to combine pop and trap music with his general vocal style, and I think some of these moments are absolutely incredible. For example, on the song Bring It Back, which was, in my opinion, the standout track of all the singles that were released prior to this thing releasing, where you have Yachty singing in his brighter and generally more happy little auto-tune voice over this absolutely unexpected unexpected like 80s pop instrumental. Or in the song Made of Glass, where you've got Yachty singing these really cheesy, kind of simple lyrics over this really grandioso instrumental that kind of sounds like it could have been ripped from some kind of 80s flick. Another one that I personally found a lot of enjoyment in was the song Better, which almost sounds like it could have come straight out of like the mid-2000s. With Yachty once again singing auto-tune, but this time it's over this really poppy kind of tropical instrumental. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is that with tracks like these, in my opinion, Yachty really plays to his strengths in terms of innovation, because he's really able to take these kind of old style sounds that have really gone out of style at this point, kind of combine his really modern take with his vocals and trap music, rap music, whatever you want to call it, kind of combine them together in this very unique way that I found very enjoyable. Elsewhere on this album, I'd probably say that I found a decent chunk of enjoyment just in Lil Yachty's lyricism, just his endless, countless, ridiculous sexual innuendos that just... One part of me really wants to cringe at these lyrics, the other part of me just laughs and laughs and laughs, and it's great, you know. It's part of the reason that I think Lil Yachty is so unique as an artist, and I really just love him for it. These parts of the album are absolutely essential to what makes this album what it is, and like I said, it's not absolutely anything amazing, and you really can't compare Lil Yachty's lyricism to that of anyone else really in the rap game, or at least the big guns. But he's just kind of doing his own thing, and I love him for it. He's a little genius in his own way. I will say, though, that one song in particular on this album kind of had me grasping for air, and not in the best way possible. It was the single Peekaboo, and I cannot get into this song at all. I mean, I think the Migos verses in general were okay in some spots. Like I said, you can draw that parallel between Quavo's verse on this and in Minnesota. But in general, I could not stand what Lil Yachty tried to do with this track. I mean, Lil Yachty just gives listeners this terrible, disgusting, hardly even amusing image, and then will not let go of it for the life of him. At least just in my opinion, Peekaboo was one of the easy throwaway tracks on the record, and you know, there are at least like 5 or 6 or 7 maybe other throwaway tracks on this album. I mean, the thing is 21 tracks long, and really I feel like there's no excuse for really any album kind of this stature being that long. He's really not getting anything said in certain tracks of this album that he didn't already say earlier in it. Like I said, you've got these endless sexual innuendos that he uses, but eventually even those get a little bit tiring. And some of these tracks are just ridiculously boring, because I feel like the producers who linked up with Yachty for this album, some of them just didn't know at all how to use his vocals in a fun or spunky or creative way. This album did fall quite a bit below my expectations, but in large part I'd probably say that's just because Yachty wastes a lot of valuable time in this nearly 70-minute album, when Yachty could have cut out some of the filler tracks and made Teenage Emotions a very solid like 45-minute run. But in the end, I'd say that Teenage Emotions is generally a very hit or miss album, and when Lil Yachty hits, he really hits hard. And you know, that at least makes the album not terrible, and I myself enjoyed a good chunk of this thing. Like I said, this album is decent, but I personally have some mixed opinions about it. For Teenage Emotions, I am probably feeling a light 5 out of 10, if that's fair at all. As always, I have the Spotify link down in the description if you guys want to check out this album for yourselves, and if you have already listened to it, I'm kind of curious. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. As always, I'm Landon Remixes. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I'll catch you later. Peace.